Welcome to Rights and Remedies, the podcast where we explore the law, the fight for justice, and healing. I'm Allison Mahoney, your host and a lawyer dedicated to fighting for the rights of survivors of domestic and sexual abuse, as well as children harmed by the child welfare system. Each week, we delve into legal battles and court cases, share powerful stories that demand change, and spotlight the cutting-edge practices that are helping victims on their journey to healing. So, if you're ready to dive into the intersection of advocacy and healing, subscribe to Rights and Remedies today. New episodes are released weekly, and we can't wait to have you join the conversation. Together, we can make a difference. Welcome back to Rights and Remedies. Before we begin today's episode, please be advised that we will be discussing some sensitive topics, including intimate partner violence and narcissism, which may be triggering for some listeners. If you need to take a break or skip this episode, please do so and prioritize your own well-being as always. Today's guest is Lorene Roberts. I'm very excited to have her. Thank you for being here. She is an author, a podcast host, and a holistic counselor. Welcome, Lorene.
Good morning, Alison. Oh, it's not morning for you, but it is for
It's
me.
evening for me. But it looks nice and sunny where you are.
Oh,
Uh,
it's 30 degrees and getting hotter, so it's
and I guess maybe that's a good place to start. Where are you right
I'm
now?
in Melbourne, Australia. So we're in the peak of summer where it's absolutely boiling at the moment, but that's life.
I have wanted to visit Australia someday. Someday I will. The flight always deters me a little bit when I'm planning trips, but I've heard that it's worth it.
It well and truly is.
So I think to start, can you share what does a holistic counselor do?
Well, a holistic counsel, it's a really funny title. It's really hard to describe what I do because I work with the mind, the body, the spirit, the whole lot. And everybody has different issues and brings to the table, different set of whatever it is that they're bringing to the table because we've all got very different life experiences. But at the end of the day, quite often, even though it's different, it's still the same.
Hmm.
So I tend to work with whatever is needed by the person themselves. So I do a lot of root cause therapy, which goes back into, what was the main reason? What was the first time something happened that set off the trauma that then we carried on in life and it becomes a pattern. So I work a lot with that, but I also work with other bits and pieces as well. So it depends on what you come to me for as to what we'll do.
Okay.
But I
And
work with mind, body, and spirit.
mind, body, and spirit. And so what separates a holistic counselor from other types of counselors or more traditional counselors?
More traditional counselors tend to just do talk therapy,
Okay.
and I love my clients to actually walk out with a solution for something or some strategies to deal and to cope with stuff. So I tend to be a little bit more hands-on in a way than a lot of, and how do you feel about that? And how do you feel about that? Look, I do that too at times because people need to be heard.
Yeah,
And that couldn't be what they really need more than anything is just someone to actually hear them and listen to them. But if you're only hearing them and listening to them, you're not giving them the strategy, or in my eyes, you're not giving them the strategies to cope and to deal with issues.
I see. I see. That makes sense. And do you work with people only in Australia or all over the place?
No, no, no. That's the beauty of Zoom. I work from home, so I have my home office. So I've got everything around me, but I work on Zoom and I can see anybody from anywhere, and we can always match up a time somewhere.
Okay.
We can
Okay.
always match up a time, like your afternoons are my mornings, and it works.
And you mentioned mind, body, and spirit. Can you share a bit more about what you do in terms of body and spirit when it comes to counseling?
Okay, so look, sometimes somatic work is needed. So sometimes, we might sit there and we might say, okay, now feel into your heart and give yourself a hug because we don't tend to love ourselves. So it might be that there was an anger issue that I was dealing with someone. So we did a lot of shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. And that is the somatic work. So that's the body work because the trapped emotions do get stored in our body
Mm.
and they sit there until we release them. So I do a little bit of somatic work as well. Now, when it comes to spiritual stuff, that is my absolute belief. So and it depends on the client again, but I always draw a card for what my client is going to need that session and before the session, and then
Interesting.
reveal it at the end of the session. And I tell you what, it is always so spot on. I can, draw the healing card and I think, what is this about? And then we'll have our session at the end. I'll go, right, now I'll read this to you. And it was always drawn before the beginning of the session.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
so
like
interesting.
so intuitive. It's just not funny. It's like, oh, wow.
What inspired you to do that?
I suppose I love, and I have one set of cards which I always use for clients. It's like their cards.
Uh-huh.
That is my client card. I don't know why. It just works really, really well. That's just who I am. So I
Yeah.
like oracle cards, and I like a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Um,
Yeah.
and speaking of inspiration, what inspired you to do this type of work with people in general, to become a holistic counselor and to get into this space?
I suppose I came out of an abusive marriage, totally broken, totally lost. I couldn't write anything that I wanted for me down. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know how I was going to survive. I was just so broken, it wasn't funny. So I had to go on a healing journey. So, I went to the psychologists and all the rest of them, and they all sat there and listened to me, but nobody gave me any solutions. They didn't give me, I couldn't walk out with something and say, okay, now, when I get into this, if I did this every day, no one told me, what to do. So I just went and started exploring and, did I always was very passionate about self-development and
Mhm.
actually trying to improve myself. And that was probably, so that's where I started.
Yeah.
And after doing so much stuff, then I went and did a proper counselling course and so forth. But I had all these other little bits and pieces in my tool bag well and truly before that. And I could see the benefits of them. You
Yeah,
know, I,
I can relate to what you're talking about as someone who's been in therapy and has been frustrated by like what, having the question linger of like, what do I do? Like what are my action steps from here? So
yeah,
I can understand why that would be an incredibly helpful thing for your clients. And also, like, I think the fact that you've gone through it and have done the work on yourself probably makes you more deeply informed in terms of what your clients may be looking for or need.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Do you work primarily with people who have experienced abuse in relationships?
Not necessarily. Like this year I've had a couple of clients that have been men that have lost their wives.
Mm.
And they're just as lost and just as broken losing their wives. They really don't know how to deal with relationships with their children and their adult children because the wives were the center of the family. And now all of a sudden they're just sort of sitting off on the edges and they're totally lost and broken as well. So although, as said before, like it's all same, but different.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all think that we're unique with our own unique problems, but basically they're all the same. And it's all about relationship building. It's about, self-worth. It's about, being assertive and having belief in yourself. It's often the same thing, but just with a different coat on.
Yeah. Self-worth seems like that would be a tricky one to resolve.
Yeah.
From your experience, how, like, there, you probably don't have an exact number to give me, but what's the process for helping someone to regain their sense of self-worth or build it up if they've never really had self-worth, and how long does it take?
Well, that again depends on the individual. And that's why there is no cookie cutter, do this, 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 and this. Like I've got a program out at the moment, the 5 steps, to getting over things. Well, 5 steps is great. It's a start.
Yeah.
It's not going to dig down into the little bits and pieces. So then I'm developing a 12-week course. And in 12 weeks, some of it's going to be hit and miss for everybody because we're not all the same.
Hmm.
But what you need to work through, your own self-worth issues is going to be very different to the lady next door that's been beaten and battered all of her life,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And so, in coming up with a tailored approach for clients, am I correct in thinking that it's something that just unfolds as you're working with them, what they need?
With one-on-one work, absolutely. It really does. I can't plan what we're going to do this week until we get in there and I say, "How was your week?" And they'll say, "Oh, blah 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 blah." And I will just go twink, 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 twink. Oh, we're going here
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
One-on-one work is very, very different to a guided, structured, group course where you have to guide people and say, okay, today we're going to do, affirmations, we're going to talk to ourselves and take out that negative self-talk that a lot of us do, oh God, I'm stupid. Well, no, you're not stupid, and I wouldn't tell you that you're stupid, but I can tell myself that I'm stupid. Oh,
Hmm.
how does that work?
Right. And I think a lot of times people don't even realize that they're doing that, that there is such a negative
Mm,
loop going on inside.
yes.
Um,
Yeah. So self-awareness is probably the first step on anything. You've got to become very aware of what you're doing and what's happening around you as well, and what you're allowing to happen. There's a very interesting thing that nobody really looks at, We allow things to happen to us.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Is that hard for people to face?
Very much so. Very much so. Especially if they've been through really bad narcissistic abuse.
Mhm.
They've been the victim and they've very good at playing the role of the victim. But realistically, the victim has to allow the perpetrator to do it. Otherwise, he'll move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that is a tough pill to swallow and things to acknowledge. So, speaking of narcissism, I'm happy you brought this up because I wanted to talk to you about narcissism. For those who are unfamiliar or may have the wrong definition in their mind because there's so much talk about narcissism these days, can you explain what is narcissism and narcissistic abuse?
Oh, narcissistic abuse. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because it's different for everybody. And we all have a little bit of narcissism within ourselves, and that's what protects us and keeps us safe. If we don't put ourselves first, then we're open to just so you need a little bit. But then there's the difference between a narcissist who's really out there and his whole motivation is to win, regardless of the costs. So he will put you down so he feels better. It's all about, and I say he, and it's not necessarily he, it can also be she.
Yeah.
So, I look at it and I say, typical narcissistic abuse. I wrote a post on it the other day. My mother used to say to me, children should be seen and not heard. So she shut me down. So I never got to speak up. No one ever heard what I had to say.
Mhm.
Then when I married, when my ex-husband said to me, no one wants to hear what you've got to say, I believed him. I believed him, and that made him be able to he was the speaker of the family because he was worthy and I wasn't. So he put me down. So, I was always dumb and stupid. Mum told me, oh, it's so lovely just to have a really average kid like you.
Oh,
Compared to your sister, who's so brilliant,
yeah.
made me feel like this big. So my ex-husband, like put me down, made me, you really don't know anything, you really, what would you know? You've got no common sense. You've got so put me down that I had no self-worth, no value. I didn't think my voice was worth anything. So they're probably all dying now because I'm speaking up,
I
speaking
was
out.
just thinking about that as I can look at you now.
Yeah, and people are confronted because I'm just saying it how it is. This is what happened. This is how I behaved. But then I look at my ex-husband and I say, if I hadn't allowed him to do that, if I had have told him to shut up, what I had to say was really important, he wouldn't have been there. So
Mm,
we would never have connected. So I actually allowed it. And I have to own that part too.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Are,
narcissistic abuse is an incredible thing. It can be, they really make you feel like you're going crazy. You know, I was always told, you can't remember anything. You've got that wrong because you can't remember. So I took on that I can't remember. So I don't
gas
know. Yeah,
gaslighting, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Crazy making behavior that makes
yeah,
you distrust your own thoughts and
yeah,
instincts.
yeah.
So you're describing a situation where these negative beliefs about yourself were instilled from a young age and then reinforced during this marriage for yourself and for others who are in that situation. How do you even begin to get out of it? And almost, I don't know if this may be the wrong way of putting it, but kind of snap out of it and realize, wait, what's happening here isn't right.
It's interesting you say that. At around the age of 50, my daughter, who was 27 or so, 28, 27, came to me and said, Mum, Dad's abusing you. And what he does to you is unacceptable.
Mhm.
Now, if it hadn't have been my daughter, I would have told you to clear off. I
Yeah.
wasn't listening to it. And as he used to say, I don't hit you. I've never hit you. So you've been treated really well. Okay, I've been treated really, really well. The fact that, I could never do anything, could never have friends because he'd alienated me from my friends and isolated, which is another one of the symptoms of narcissism. All of this stuff had gone on. I didn't see as abuse. But when she came to me, I had to acknowledge it
Mhm.
and I had to think about it. And she said, Mum, you need to leave. And I went, oh, how do I leave? How do I look after myself?
Yeah.
Where do I go? What do I do? And I remember sitting in the car at the time and I was listening to Tony Robbins. I had bought some CDs of his. And Tony Robbins said, you cannot change another person. The only person you can change is yourself. And by changing yourself, then you can change the dynamics around you. But you can't change another person.
Yeah.
And at the time, my ex-husband was in his garage fiddling around and I'm sitting there and I just burst into tears and went, I can never change him. Nothing will ever change.
Mhm.
And that is okay. That is the way it's going to be. And then I thought of his mother, whose husband was also, he was a pig of a man, his husband, her husband. And I thought, I'm just going to be like her. I'm
Oh.
going to have to tolerate this until the day I die, and that's my lot in life. And I thought, this is it. I'm just going to have to put up with it, and that's it.
Hmm.
I'd resigned myself to that. I wasn't leaving because I didn't know how to leave. I couldn't leave. I didn't have the power to leave.
Yeah.
And where was I going to go? What was I going to do? How was I going to manage? Oh my goodness. It was just too hard.
Hmm.
But then he went and had an affair. And I think I got to the stage where I was so broken. He didn't like how broken I was in lots of ways, I think. Anyhow, he ran off with someone else. Now what do I do? I now say thank you, thank you, thank you to this woman for taking him.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for leaving me because I've now been able to find myself, to find my power,
Mhm.
to find the person that I am within.
Isn't it funny how things work out like that, or something that
Oh, yeah.
doesn't seem like a gift at first?
Yes.
It is a gift if
Yep.
you're able to move
Yep.
forward after,
Exactly.
whatever it is that happened. Yeah.
Exactly. And after he left, my daughter's dog used to sleep outside my bedroom. You know how animals know when there's somebody dying? And I'm sure I was dying
Oh.
because I would just go into my bedroom and I would just cry for hours and hours, and I just didn't know how to get out of bed.
Mhm.
And I think I was so broken that the dog knew that I was literally dying until I got myself out of it.
Yeah. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all of this in such a personal story. I think it's a true testament to your strength that you were able to pull yourself out of this horrible situation.
It's my
And you-
biggest, it is my biggest gift
Yeah. Yeah.
that
And
I'm
I mean,
so
I'm sure a
grateful.
lot of difficult things in life seem easy now because you've
Yeah,
overcome something so challenging. Can
yeah.
you talk some about the healing process, both for yourself or for your clients, and what that's like? So you're describing a situation where you're like really down in the wake of him leaving and this abuse. How do you piece your life back together?
There are steps that you do need to go through. First of all, you need to, a lot of what a lot of women try to do is they try to bury it. They turn to alcohol. Is a huge problem. It's wine o'clock time. How often do you hear? I don't know if they say it in America. They do in Australia. It's wine o'clock time. Somewhere in the world it is time for a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's a depressant too.
yeah,
So it might make you feel a little bit better in the
yeah,
moment, and then you're going to feel a lot worse afterwards.
yeah. So yeah, the alcohol consumption for women as they're getting older, getting through stuff, that's how they bury it. And they bury the emotions and they just run off, and they suddenly, jump into work and suddenly become workaholics. And that's how I coped a lot through my marriage, as I was a workaholic at one stage. And you tend to do things to mask and to hide the emotions that you're feeling.
Yeah.
One thing is to actually honor the feelings that you've got and know about it. You know, really feel them, and cry it out, and then go, okay, now time to move on. So you need to give yourself time to grieve, because you have lost something major in your life often.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is the death. It's the death of something, and
Yeah.
it's a major death. So you need to feel it. So that's one of the first things you need to do. I also believe a lot in journaling. I found that writing made a very big difference, and going into my soul and asking myself what I needed and what I wanted. And so journaling is a great thing.
Mm.
Um, Learning about affirmations and turning my thoughts around so I became positive,
Mhm.
makes a massive difference too. When you believe that you are dumb and stupid, and nobody wants to hear you, and blah 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 blah, all of this, absolute
Right.
crap. You need to change that to go, no, people do need to hear what I've got to say, and not many people can speak up. So let's speak up and say,
Right. Yeah. And I
let's,
mean, thoughts, it's a lot of work to change thoughts, but it impacts how you see the world, right?
yes,
Like if you have
yes,
negative thoughts, then you're looking through that lens at everything that's happening to you and maybe
yes,
missing beautiful gifts that are out there, waiting for
yes.
you.
And change your environment and change the dynamics around you too. Makes a difference as well.
Why is changing your environment important?
Well, to take yourself into something new. So, in other words, if you've got everybody saying, agreeing that, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, you
Yeah,
need to put positive people around you. That's what I mean by environment, not
got it.
necessarily environment, but also make your environment nice around you.
Hmm.
Don't live with the painting on the wall that he bought that he hated. Go and buy yourself a great big picture of a rose if that's going to make you happy. you
Yeah.
know think about what you want. Mm.
which seems
It
like
is.
self-love, what you're describing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about your book. Or you've written multiple books, right?
I
Or,
have. I've written two books. Yeah,
yeah.
I've written two books. The first one was literally on my life experiences. It was called Crazy Stupid Love. And
Mm.
it was before I knew that there was even a movie about it. And at the time, there was no book of narcissism out there. So there was nothing for me to dig my teeth into. So I wrote my experiences. I look back now, I would like to rewrite it now because it's probably a bit, he did this and he did that and he did this. Well, yeah, but I also did put in there a lot of, and I learned this and I learned that.
Hmm.
But I'd like to probably redo it a bit, but it's available on Amazon just on Kindle. Yeah. And the other one that I've just finished is The Little Book of Divorce Survival. And it's just how to get through divorce, what steps you need to get through it, and how bickering isn't going to help, and how you need to work together if you can,
Hmm.
and if he's narcissistic, well, it's about getting through it. And yeah, it's just a very basic book on how to get through divorce.
And where can people find that book?
That's also available on Amazon.
Oh,
Yeah, Amazon have got that one as well. I'd like to get it out to all sorts of divorce family lawyers
yeah.
and
Yeah, no,
give
it
them get
seems
them to give it out. Yeah.
seems like that would be helpful. So we'll include links to in our show notes so listeners can easily find where to buy the books. And then if people are looking to connect with you, how do they connect with you? What's the best way?
There's a website on there at the moment, but I don't like it as much. And I've put a lot of work into the website, which I'm developing, which has got the free course as well. So yeah, the 5 steps to emotional freedom is on that one. So yes, just www.Lorene Roberts, Lorene, because my name is a little bit different. LoreneRoberts.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lorene. This has been such an informative and enlightening conversation. And thank you again for sharing all that you did. I think that it'll probably really connect with a lot of our listeners. So I
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
There's yeah, I've written lots of blogs and lots of bits and pieces. So there's lots of stuff around that you can find that I've written and so forth. But if you need help, just connect with me. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook as well.
Perfect.
So
Thank you so much for your time and have
pleasure.
a good day because it's morning for you.
It is.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for joining us on Rights and Remedies. I hope today's episode gave you valuable insights into the legal issues facing victims and the pathways to healing. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Whether you're a survivor, an advocate, or someone looking to learn more, we're here to support and empower you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. You can also follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at ALM Law LLC for updates, resources, and more. Until next time, take care and remember that together we can make a difference.